Our community has come together to tell you the history of Los Alamitos. I'm your host, Myrt Perisho. We're taping at a building that was built in 1903, and it was a home, a private home, until 1985 when the News Enterprise bought it and is now the home of the News Enterprise. The early Mexican families had a large impact on this community, and we have a couple here tonight to tell us their story that goes back as far as 1914. Welcome Irene and Jess Torres. I'm so glad you both came. So far, right?
Right.
You came from right across the street, didn't you? Right across the street. Irene, let's start with you because ladies first. Okay, Jess?
Sure.
Okay. All right, tell us where you were born, how you happened to come to Los Alamitos in your real early years.
Well, I was born in Chihuahua, Mexico, and in 1913. And in February of 1914, we came here to Los Alamitos.
And who's we?
My mother and I.
Uh-huh.
And we stopped with my uncle, her brother, Frank Prieto. He was here already.
And that's why you came here?
That's why she came.
What was he doing here?
He was working.
Where?
I think it was in the sugar factory.
Probably. That
Probably, I'm not
most of the people
sure.
in town didn't
I can't,
the sugar beet industry.
But I think it was on already. I think the sugar factory was already
I bet your
in
brother's
business.
glad to have you both show up.
Who?
I bet your mother's brother is glad that you both showed
He's
up.
dead.
Well, I mean, when you showed up.
Oh, I thought you meant.
No, no.
Yes.
Happy to see you.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
There
Well,
was another
tell us
brother,
about your
too.
first home here in Los Alamitos.
Well, we lived in. My mother married Juan Soto,
Uh-huh.
and his family moved, his father, and left him the place. It was a hotel.
It was a hotel here in town.
Right on Pine and Catalina. Right on the corner.
Oh, yes, Pine and Catalina. Okay. And that's where you
so
lived?
That's where we lived.
And at that time, were you renting out rooms?
Yeah, there was rooms upstairs, and mostly single men would rent it. There was a lot of people coming from Mexico, just like it is now.
Just like it is now?
Yeah, more or less, yes. Well, maybe not as much. They would first come down, and they would send for their families. And then we had rooms towards the back, 2 little rooms, and when the families came, they would live there.
And I also remember the story you told about the barn in back.
Yes, we
What
had
did you do about renting that barn?
We rented it out to a circus.
A circus.
They made we had a circus there for about 3 or 4 days.
Oh, that must have been fun for the kids in town.
For the whole
you.
town.
Yes,
whole
having
town.
the barn in the back with the circus.
We had horses and pigs and cows.
Yeah, you said you had
And
lots of
chickens,
livestock
a lot of chickens,
and things like that. Well, where did you go to school?
To the Laurel School.
Now, which one was?
Well, I went to the first one. That was, I think, just 1 room.
And you had all the.
It was right on the corner where that sporting goods store is at.
Down there by Bob's Big Boy?
Right there.
And all the classes were in 1 room?
Well, I think so.
You just remember the 1 room?
I was 7 years old when I went to school.
And
then they built the other Laurel School toward the front, towards the Los Alamitos Boulevard.
Been a number of schools in that corner, haven't there?
And I went there. I graduated there.
You did. And where did you go to church?
In Seal Beach.
There was no church in Los Alamitos until when?
Well, they started it in 1923, but I think they finished it in 1924.
Or was that St. Isidore's?
St. Isidore's.
And St. Isidore's saw some problems in the earthquake, didn't it?
Oh, yeah, it fell.
Yeah.
Well, not completely, but, the walls came tumbling down.
How did you get to Seal Beach to church?
In a buggy and horse.
You had a horse and buggy of your own?
We used to go clear up to Huntington Beach to visit my mother's other brother. We'd leave in the morning, and then we'd be back before it got dark, because we didn't have no lights.
No headlights.
No headlights.
Jess, let's get over to you. You were telling me about a car you had that used to light the headlights with a match.
A Model T.
A Model T.
They used to go to the fights at Vernon.
In Vernon?
Yes,
You went to the fights?
Yes.
When you were, what, teenager age?
Oh, I was about 15 years old.
Oh. Tell me where you came from and why you came to Los Alamitos.
Well, I come here from Jalisco. That's the state of Jalisco. My city that I born, I was 62 miles south of Guadalajara. And then I come here to join my dad, because my dad was already here. He was here in 1914 when he came here, my dad. So I come here to join my dad.
And when you came here, what was your first job?
My first job was working in the sugar company.
How long did you work there?
It was the factory closed, 1925, I think, when they closed.
That was a long time. You worked there a long time, didn't you?
Yes.
What did you do at the sugar beet factory?
Whatever they had me to do, I just go ahead and do it.
Jack of all trades?
Jack of all trades, if you say that.
And you brought your mom and...
My mom and my sister coming here in 1923.
And then your whole family was here then?
The whole family were here then.
And you worked also many different jobs, didn't you?
Well, I worked for a lot of these farming in the farming ranches.
When did you start in that?
I started at, when I was about 18 years old.
Ranching and farming?
Ranching, farming.
Was it tied in with the Bixby farm at all?
Yes. Well, not Bixby, I owned all that land.
You owned everything?
That the farmers used to farm.
And you did that for a long time?
I'll do that through 1943, that I joined the laborers, and I worked with construction with the laborers.
You work in construction?
Mm-hmm. Till up to I retired.
Was the construction in this area that you worked on?
No.
No, out of the area?
Out of the area.
Was that a union? You joined a union?
Union, yes, ma'am. Yeah. I joined that local Osanian for 506.
Santa Ana?
Mm-hmm.
506?
Mm-hmm. Or 605.
Oh, 605?
605, yeah. That was the other way.
And you also spent a lot of time working for the city of Los Alamitos after you
After I
retired from there.
retired,
You just keep retiring and working, don't you?
I retired from the local, and then I worked for the city 4 years.
What did you do for the city?
Yes, maintain the streets and patching hot stuff and take care of the streets and all that.
Mostly the streets?
Mm-hmm.
It was nice to have him around the house, wasn't it? Around the neighborhood. Popped in for lunch, didn't he, Irene? When you first came to Los Alamitos, the very first girl that you met, who was that?
You want me to tell you?
Yes, I want you to tell me the story about
this lady here.
The first one you met.
Yes,
How old was she?
She was 5 years old.
Did you know Destiny was knocking at the door? No? And you were knocking at the door, weren't you?
I knocked at the door. She's the one that come out to the door and answered the door. So I asked her, "Where's your mom? What are you waiting for?" So then her mama, "What do you want?" I said, "Well, I'm looking for so-and-so for my dad, Miguel Torres."
Uh-huh.
So I said, "Well, he lives so go to the railroad track, and you're going to see a little shack there. That's where they live." I find him there.
Little did you know, right? That you'd marry Irene.
You believe that?
Yeah, that's quite a story, Jess. When you were a teenager, what did you do for fun in this town?
Well, I'd drive my bike, go to the beaches, and ride around here on the bike. And
all your friends had bikes? You went to Seal Beach?
Went to Seal Beach on my bike. A bunch of kids go with us, you know.
Uh-huh.
Go to the beach.
And then when you got a little older, you drove that Model T to Vernon to the fights.
Yeah, that was a different.
That was a lot different?
Oh, yes.
How?
The only difference is that we have, as soon as it gets dark, we have to get off and light a match and start the lights on so we can have lights on it.
Did you ever get a ride in that car? No?
No, you ran that horse and a buggy.
Yeah, that was safer.
Horse and a bike. What did you do as a teenager in town? What did your girlfriends do?
Well, I had friends, you know, and play with my friends, and all the people that lived in the back, they all had kids, so we all got together and played. My
Where'd your
mother
mom
used
shop?
at the Piggly Wiggly store in Anaheim, and he used to drive us.
Well, that's after I had my Model T.
Yeah,
That was
he
the
used
Model
to drive
T?
us to the store. They used to get paid, I think it was every 2 weeks at the
Sugar factory.
sugar factory, and he would drive us, and my mother would get groceries for the next, 2 weeks.
Well, now is that where most everyone shopped? Was that the
Yeah,
Piggly Wiggly?
yeah,
That
'cause
was
there
the
wasn't any
closest
big
one?
There wasn't any big store around here, just little, tiny little market.
Just little markets?
Yeah, and that one had everything, clothes and everything, that.
Like a general store?
Yeah,
That's
more or
right.
less.
Bill Poe had told us about
Yeah.
that general store.
And they had one here too. We used, for everyday stuff like milk and meat and butter and all that stuff. We couldn't keep it because
Right.
all we had was just little ice boxes. no refrigerator.
And an iceman would come, and did you have a
Yeah,
sign in the
and
window
deliver our ice.
that told how many
When
pounds
we
you
wanted
wanted?
ice and when we didn't. Yeah.
You know, we're taping this because it really got started. We wanted to have this for the children in high school. And we're going to have this tape at the museum, and I think these things are things that they're going to just love coming down and hearing. How long have you been married?
Since 1929.
That's 58 years. Your 60th is coming up. How many children and grandchildren?
4. We have 4 children.
And grandchildren?
11.
11.
And 4 great-great-children.
Oh, you're lucky. Do they live close?
Well, yeah, in Garden Grove. Most of them live in Garden Grove.
You know, what I found out about this community, that so many of the families that came here a long time ago stayed. There's a lot of people that stayed. And when we were talking before the show, you were giving the names of some of the early Mexican families that were here real early, the time you came. And if I read off some of the names, you tell me a little bit about them and if they're in town.
Well, if I can.
Oh, you know all the gossip. Come on, Irene. Tell me about the Guzmans. Tell me some good stuff about the Guzmans.
The Guzmans.
Guzmans?
Well, all there is left is the lady. She's still alive, Mrs. Guzman.
Mrs. Guzman is still alive. And is she, didn't you tell me she was quite old, elderly?
Oh, yeah.
She
She
thought
must be
she might
about
be the oldest
95,
person
I
in
think.
town.
Maybe older, but keep it 95.
Oh, keep it at 95? She may
'Cause
watch the show.
They may not like it. They may sue me. Yeah, but I know she's quite old.
Now, let me see if I can just say this one right. The Navarros.
Navarros. There's some of them are still here. The daughters, you know.
Well, I have a lot more names, but you know what we're going to do right now? We're going to take a break because the director's got some neat things she's going to show. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Well, now that we've seen the great then and now pictures, we'll go back to the early families of Los Alamitos. So will you keep telling me all the good stuff about these families? We've got the oldest lady now in Los Alamitos down pat, right? Okay, let's go to the Mendez family.
Well, they were the ones that lived over here in the corner where the water well was. They had a water well.
Oh, they had the water well then. I heard
They
about
were
it.
the people
Okay.
that...
They lived right next door to where you live now. Okay, and what about the Mendozas?
They
Hello again. We're back with the Volunteer Fire Department. We'll start again with Leo. You had quite a scary thing happen to you. You were on a fire truck once and something happened. Tell us about that.
Well, we was heading out to a fire crossing Valley View. Well, we looked and apparently all the cars was stopped. And we proceeded on through and almost made it when a car come roaring through and hit us. And There was a kid pretty badly hurt and ruined the car. And, well, we could see the fire from where we was, so we let off a man, and then the rescue truck came, and they did what they could, and we went on to the fire. And
you said it gave you a pretty good jolt, though.
oh, yeah, it almost knocked me off. I happened to have a real good grip on the bar in the back, and I was flying around, finally settled back down. I looked up, and our resuscitator was flying around there, and it finally settled back down where it was. Just a kind of a eerie, amazing thing. And
that
well,
must be something that every fireman dreads, going through those intersections.
It is.
It's a real worry.
You never know when somebody's going to come a-diving through when everybody's stopped and find a hole to get through.
Yep, yep. You also had the distinction of being the last volunteer fire chief in Orange County. Tell us how that came about.
Well, when they started integrating our stations and putting paid men in, which was usually a 3-man crew around the clock, it was great for the city and all of that, but those guys were captains, and they just didn't like the volunteer chiefs telling them what to do and having a little rank on them. So, owing to me not having too much longer to go, they left me with my chief's rank and took the rest of them away from the whole county. So I had an extra few months of being chief in our department.
You're the last one.
Until I retired.
Yep, I'll be darned. Florence, you had some pretty good dances over at that fire station. Right?
Yes, that was the highlight of the year, is our firemen's dances, and that was their way of making money to buy all the equipment that they needed. The firemen had a dance crew that went out and listened to different bands to find one that they wanted for their dance, because we always had a live band, and we always had some pretty good ones. But we weren't allowed to have any liquor in the firehouse, so everybody set up their bars in the back ends of their cars. So there was quite a bit of people being outside through part of the dances.
So they'd run out
so
there
they'd go
for
out
their
there,
drinks?
get a drink, and then come back in. And but we had some great times.
That's what I've heard. I've heard
really
some
had
big
some
stories
great times
about those dances.
Everybody looked forward to it every year.
Oh, and also you had progressive dinners?
Oh yes, that was once a year we had those. And so the first stop would be for hors d'oeuvres and drinks, and then we'd go to the next one for salads. And the main meal was always at my house because I had the largest house. And besides, they liked homemade applesauce that I always made.
Is that what did it?
Right. And then they went to another house for the desserts, and then they'd have dancing or poker or whatever entertainment that they had. But we always look forward to those.
Oh, don't you wish you were doing it
Yes,
again?
there's just nothing like that anymore going on that I know of.
It's a close-knit group.
Yes, very
All
close.
of you, the wives and the men.
Yes.
And you really respected each other, didn't you?
Yeah.
I know I've heard so many good stories from the firemen about the Women's Auxiliary.
Yeah, we all took our turns at it, you know. And
well, Tony, you've got some good stories. And how about telling us about...
I promise not to tell a lot of them.
about your most embarrassing moment. You thought maybe in life, but definitely as a volunteer fireman.
As a fireman, yes. That was... we had a call, and it was to the Thrifty. It was a car on fire, I believe. And I thought we were going to the Thrifty market. And we came out of the station and headed south on Los Al Boulevard. And the driver apparently thought the same as I did for a few minutes, because he pulled up and stopped to make a left turn. And I was on the tailboard with some other men, and I thought, well, I'll jump off and stop traffic both ways so he can make his left turn. So I could make myself visible for traffic coming south and then the traffic going north. And I had my hands out and got them all stopped, and the truck started moving, and it took off straight on down the boulevard. And the guys the men on the back have an emergency button back there that honks a horn up in the front. And if they'd have pushed it, the truck would have stopped and let me get on. But they didn't push it. They just waved at me like this. So they thought that was real funny.
It was.
Yeah. And I walked over to the curb and sat down, took my helmet off, and a big Coca-Cola truck came up. And they said, did your truck run off and leave you? I said, yeah. So they gave me a ride down to the Thrifty drugstore, and it was a woman with a hot engine. The engine boiled over. That's all the fire was about. But they got me down there.
But you caught up.
I got even with the guy that was driving it too.
You did?
Yeah.
How?
I left him.
Oh, I always felt so secure. Well, you have another story it's an amazing story about the Watts riots.
Oh, that was. Our police department seemed to be more worried about it than the firemen. We didn't even think about it as far as anything, hurting our town. But they thought Long Beach was beginning to boil a little bit, and they were afraid it was going to maybe boil over into Los Alamitos. So they had a special meeting for all the firemen and the policemen, and they told us that they wanted us, if we had a call, to come prepared to protect our fire station with rifles. Yeah, I thought of John Wayne, And and if we went to a call, that they would go with us and put a perimeter around us to protect us. And so we said okay, and we got a call, and I go running down. Well, first to explain, in my house, my twins were still babies, and I had a playpen in the living room, and I remember having rifles leaning up against it, loaded, so in case the fire bell went off, I could run down there with it. And I went storming down there with it, and a friend of mine was also a fireman. He came in, but he hadn't been to the meeting. And I handed him the rifle, and I says, "Protect our station." He looked at me, "What's that? What are you talking about?" And we would go to the call, whatever it was, and
oh boy,
the people usually come out. They're real nosy when there's a rescue or a call.
Sure.
And when they saw all the policemen around us with guns, they stayed in their houses. They didn't come out at all.
So they ringed you with guns while you fought the fire.
Yeah,
Boy,
that was their plan. Yeah. They were really ready for war. I was amazed. I thought about taking some firecrackers and throwing them in a little fire, but I thought with those guys with machine guns, they'd probably kill half the neighborhood. So.
And they did have machine guns.
Yes, from the Navy base. They borrowed them from the Navy, which amazed me too.
Yeah.
And they even asked me. They said, if snipers start shooting at you, in the dark, on your fire trucks, we had big spotlights, and they said, would you please try to pick them out, And I says, I can't reach that far when I'm laying under the truck, because that's where I'm going to be.
You remember all that too, of course, Leo, don't you?
Yeah.
That was an exciting. You were glued to your TV sets during that time. Glued.
Oh, that was terrible.
That was something else.
Well, I want to ask each of you a question. I want you to really think about this. If you could have one thing now that you had then, what do you miss most? What would you like to have now in your life that you had in those good old days?
Youth.
Youth, yes.
Youth. What else? What do you really miss?
As a fireman, as a volunteer fireman?
Yeah.
Oh, the comradeship we had
Right.
with each other, and the friends, and the parties, and the
Yes,
fun.
a lot
and
of
help
good
one another.
times.
Because if you needed any help, if you were going to pour concrete and the truck was coming, you could call about 5 or 6 guys, and they'd all be there to help you wheelbarrow it in the backyard. And all it cost you was maybe, I don't know how much beer it cost, but it.
Yeah.
What about you, Florence?
Same thing. I miss all the people,
You miss
I don't miss him getting up at night, in the middle of the night, every night practically, or leaving
That's right, every
dinners.
night.
Leaving the dinners that we had prepared. But I do miss the parties, the people that you don't see that much of anymore.
On the dinners we missed, it never bothered me as much as it did my wife. It just irritated. I mean, she really got mad. And I thought, I'm the one that has to eat it cold when I come back, and I was pumped up and I wanted to go to the station. You'd hated to leave your dinner, but it didn't make me mad to leave. But it
didn't make me mad
the poor
either.
person that had to prepare it, well,
Right.
I can understand their feeling.
Yeah.
What about you, Leo?
Well, I miss the people.
The people?
All the firemen and so forth. Such a, how do you put it? We got along so well together, work together, and when you work together and play together, you can get along together. And it's just awful nice to have the association of all the people.
Yeah. We asked Bill Poe this question. He very angrily almost said the explosion of the population. I missed being able to walk across the street and drive anywhere. That was pretty good too.
Yes.
Yeah, but everyone misses the people.
Right.
And the good times. What do you, what would you change in this town right now if you could change something?
Some of it we don't want to say.
Oh, come on, say it. Sure, you can say it.
Fifth Amendment.
Oh.
What would you like to change? Anything in zoning, anything in...
Well, I don't think the leadership listens to the people.
You'd like to have more of that?
I like to have them listen to the people, you know. I don't believe they're doing it.
Do you feel the same way?
Well, a little of that too, but I kind of think they ought to turn their efforts towards some of the bad things that's going on rather than to harass the people about a few RVs.
Okay, we got that one. How about you, Tony?
I just, it's maybe what the other man you talked to in the last show? Or
Bill Poe?
Yeah, where it's dangerous to cross the street and there's so much traffic coming in, and I would like to see it back where it was a lot slower. It just seemed everything slower.
Yeah.
I don't get into the politics that much. I don't pay that much attention. I'm too busy.
You work at Douglas, don't you? Everyone we've talked to has had the same feeling. They like it to back to the old town, the old ways, but it's, I don't know what you do about that when progress is coming.
You can't do it.
And prices are going up.
Go back and fight one of those manure fires again.
Well, we could go on for a long time, but we are going to have you back for another half hour. Is that okay? We've got lots we haven't covered, and we want the three of you back. You've been terrific. Okay?
Okay.
Thanks a lot to all three of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Watch us next week because we're going to have another great show with these three. Until then, so long.